俺の中に今指は15本。残り5本全部一度に食わされても体は乗っ取られないと思う。
Jujutsu Kaisen is a very memorable battle shonen for me, because unlike others of its kind, it had a rather unusual way of blowing up into the mainstream. My Hero Academia has its second season, which features some of the genre's most entertaining tournament arc. Demon Slayer has its episode 19, which features one of Ufotable's most well-crafted scenes and climaxes. Jujutsu Kaisen has this pretty boy taking his blindfold off. I remember when season 1 first aired. This new kid on the block suddenly became the talk of the town overnight. Gojo is so powerful, him just revealing his eyes is enough to get his show to explode across the online anime community. I kinda get it though. One of JJK's appeals from its first season has been the characters, their dynamics, and its quirky role reversal. What I mean is how the strongest, most overpowered character isn't on the villain side. It's our sensei. Anytime a villain is messing with us, Gojo appears. Then the villains run away. I always think this is such a refreshing and fun concept. Jujutsu Kaisen's great characters were of course complemented with some of the highest production values in the industry. Studio Mappa's adaptation has always delivered since its first season, especially in the action department. The high-octane, gung-ho fights are always accompanied with incredible animations. That's why I was pleasantly surprised when Season 2 began, and the best thing about it wasn't even the action. Moments that really stuck with me were moments where there's less action with 10 out of 10 animations, and more just how a certain scene looks and feels. It's the sole idea and creativity behind its presentation that left an impression on me. Oh, and we do have someone who's responsible for this. Quick context, this person is also known as Goso, and he is the director of Jujutsu Kaisen's second and third season. Ever since his directorial debut in Season 2, the show seems to finally carve its own identity as an adaptation. What starts as your familiar battle shonen experience turns to something that feels almost experimental in its direction. Which brings me to the first point that I want to talk about. If you've been on this wonderful little corner of the internet called Twitter, you may have noticed how there are lots of individuals that 1. Believe that manga are just storyboards for anime, and 2. Believe that anime adaptations are obligated to elevate their source material by giving us 10 out of 10 sakuga every episode, the latter being the one that I want to talk about. If an anime fails to do that, it gets treated as a disappointment among fans nowadays.
Know your fucking place, trash!
As if the job of an adaptation is to compete with the original work. This mindset leads to a very transactional way of watching anime. Fans start watching adaptations like they're doing side-by-side comparison. Iconic panels not being adapted one-to-one suddenly means the anime did a bad job adapting. I'd maybe understand these complaints if we weren't getting the treatment we got for the entirety of the show. I mean, sure, if you're one of this specimen called manga readers, you probably have an expectation of how a scene is going to be adapted. But come on, stop acting like the product you got is One Punch Man Season 3 for fuck's sake, because to me, that is such a limited way to look at adaptations. In fact, I think it completely misunderstands what an adaptation even is. At its best, adaptation is not replication, it's translation, and translation always involves interpretation. The goal shouldn't be to just recreate the manga panel by panel, otherwise, what's even the point of adapting it into anime? The whole reason adaptations exist is because a new medium can create a new experience. Manga and anime do not communicate in the same way. Manga works with page turns, paneling, and the reader's imagination filling in the gaps in between panels. Anime has a completely different set of tools: music, voice acting, colors, sound design, camera work, editing, timing. If an anime is only trying to preserve the exact panel composition one-to-one, then it's not even taking full advantage of being an anime. And that's why I think this obsession with panel accuracy can get so stupid, because now you're judging anime purely based on how well it imitates manga, instead of how well it uses the strengths of its own medium. Jujutsu Kaisen under Goso's hands have always challenged this notion. Instead of making a manga in motion, it translates what's so great about the manga into the language of animation, keeping the essence while also adding its own flair. It's not trying to displace its source material, it's not trying to be better than it, it's simply trying to become the best anime version of Jujutsu Kaisen possible. And once you start looking at the show through that lens, something else becomes very obvious. Now, if there's one thing that stood out to me about Jujutsu Kaisen's second and third season, and especially third season, it's how every episode looks interesting. It's like the people working behind it are all allergic to making anything look generic. Even the more mundane parts of the story, where they can easily cut corners, never felt neglected. To the point where it feels like there's an animation philosophy behind the production to push creative freedom to the limit, encouraging the animators to put their own artistic expression onto the screen. Whether it's referencing other movies and pop cultures, or giving the individual animators room to leave their fingerprints all over an episode. The way I see it, Jujutsu Kaisen is a very fortunate show, filled with talents that truly understand and love the medium, and they really take advantage of the fact that anime isn't the same as manga. Let's start with Season 2. Season 2 begins with these two characters investigating a cursed house. Out of nowhere, this anime turns into an indie horror film. The vintage camera footage with aspect ratio change, the slow pans. I genuinely thought I was watching the wrong show. Skip forwards 2 episodes later. Towards the end, they played the ending theme early to trick us into thinking that the episode was going to conclude on an emotional, more heartwarming conclusion. Man. Geto's episode was also the main highlight of the season. In fact, it's probably still my favorite episode from the whole series. From the use of applause instead of rain as an auditory manifestation of Geto's disillusionment and trauma, to just the overall aesthetic of the episode, emphasizing his mental breakdown and turning point as a character. None of this requires mind-blowing animation that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It requires the creative minds of artists, with a burning passion for the art they are crafting. And what's crazy is that I've barely scratched the surface in terms of how experimental the direction gets. If you already thought this is insane, folks, you have seen nothing yet, because Season 3 took this approach to a whole different level. Every creative decision, every unconventional and unique style it went with in Season 2, they crank it up to 11. And in my opinion, Season 3 is where, literally, in almost every scene, there's going to be something that's interesting to talk about from a visual standpoint. Something as basic as a character walking is treated with so much care and attention to detail. They take a movement that's simple on paper and give it so much weight, variety, and personality. Even scenes when it's just character talking are never boring to look at. You might be overwhelmed by the amount of glaze this show keeps getting whenever an episode with a fight drops. And while it is hype, I think the real flex of this adaptation is how it can be just as compelling when nobody's throwing hands. And there's no better example for this than Higuruma's episode. After the calling game begins, we get a whole episode dedicated to a new character's backstory. His name is Higuruma, and he is a defense attorney. For a moment, this shit barely even feels like Jujutsu Kaisen anymore. It feels like watching a Satoshi Kon film. What stands out about this episode compared to other ones was not only that it's a change of pace, but also how much faith it has in its character writing and presentation. Higuruma is already such a strong character, and the anime uses his introduction to prove that Jujutsu Kaisen's biggest selling point isn't just action spectacles. It's how vividly it can bring its people to life. Character writing alone can generate the same level of investment, and that sense of balance is rare for a battle shonen IP. Giving an entire episode to one character's backstory is one thing. Making it feel this gripping, this stylish, and this essential is another. I could continue to glaze the shit out of this season, but 1, we'd be here all day, and 2, I'm sure you already get the point. By turning each episode into some sort of a playground, allowing the animators to have fun and experiment to express their vision of the story, this ultimately creates a fresh viewing experience for us, the audience, especially when watching it on a week-to-week basis. That is why I want to discuss about how you know, I'm actually a binge watcher. I don't like consuming media on a weekly schedule. But with Jujutsu Kaisen, this format started feeling like part of the appeal. Usually, I watch anime for my own sake, just to feel something on my own terms. But with JJK, the discourse surrounding each episode every week started feeling like part of the experience itself. One thing I've noticed with anime in recent years is that a lot of shows tend to have that one episode. Do you know what I mean? That one episode where things really popped off. Consistent animation, stronger drawings, powerful direction, and an overall more polished presentation. It's the episode where viewers go, yeah, all the budget went here. I bring this up because it is a perception that applies to most anime. Except for Mappa's favorite child apparently. Though honestly, at this point, I don't even know which work is their favorite anymore, because all of them seem to be treated like it's a passion project. Having a prioritized episode is not something new. Actually, it's common for an anime TV series to have one. But I guess they don't give a flying fuck about having a priority episode when all of the episodes are handled like it's a priority episode. I'm not even talking about the Shibuya arc here, by the way, because that arc features fight after fight, back to back to back. It's a non-stop spectacle that's basically engineered to be an adrenaline overdose. What really caught me off guard is the way they handle hidden inventory and the lead up to the culling game. Pacing wise, and even in terms of the content itself, both of these parts don't necessarily rely on high stakes battles to get your heart racing. Yet the staff did their absolute best to showcase their skills, making the quieter stretches just as engaging. And that's why Jujutsu Kaisen becomes one of the very few shows where I followed every episode religiously. I willingly stepped outside of my binge watching habits and watched each episode the moment it aired, because any episode might give me something to talk about, something to remember. And I've rarely felt that with a mainstream shonen before. Whether you personally enjoy that approach or not is completely subjective, but this boldness, unpredictable nature has become one of the core reasons the Jujutsu Kaisen anime leaves such a unique aftertaste compared to others of its kind. In the midst of so many hyped up titles being adapted, I can confidently say that Jujutsu Kaisen will remain a one-of-a-kind adaptation that stands tall above all, not only within its genre, but in anime as a whole. And yes, that is a huge statement, because even when others are getting their own 10 out of 10 treatment from their respective studios, and even when newer titles come out with equally promising production values, there's still nothing quite like the way Jujutsu Kaisen was handled. Not because it's flawless, not because it doesn't have shortcomings, but because in spite of all that, it still feels special. You are my special. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, to me, Jujutsu Kaisen will remain not just another battle shonen adaptation, but one of the most fascinating anime adaptations, period. So yeah, TLDR, yeah, this show fucking slaps.